The loudspeakers blared over the hurried footsteps and the clatter of suitcase wheels on the Havenport terminal floor, a seemingly ordinary morning. Passengers filed through the ticket gates, preoccupied with phone schedules and coffees. But amid the bustle, an ominous feeling was brewing, and it wasn't human. Officer Melissa Grant tightened her grip on the leash, her eyes flickering with concern, as the service dog, Thor, a tall, well-trained German shepherd, suddenly stopped. No warning, no sound. Just a sharp stop body, as taut as a bowstring eyes, locked on a hidden corner near the waiting benches. "Thor, what's wrong?" Melissa asked softly, but received no response other than a deep growl from the creature's throat. In that moment, everything seemed to freeze. No one in the station knew that they were about to witness an event that would shake the town of Havenport, a morning that would never be normal again. Thor began to pull toward the bench near the wall where an old suitcase sat as if forgotten. Melissa frowned, her heart pounding. The suitcase looked old, with faded fabric frayed handles and rusted zippers, the kind of thing that would easily pass by in a crowded luggage rack. But Thor didn't pass by. He stopped, growled, and let out a fierce bark that startled the people around him. Nearby passengers backed away, some screaming. A mother clutched her small child, while a station attendant hurriedly pulled out a walkie-talkie to call for backup. Melissa knelt beside Thor, her hand tightening on the leash, her eyes fixed on the suitcase. She could feel the tension radiating through the dog, every muscle tightening with alertness. "Back off! Keep your distance!" she shouted, her voice echoing throughout the area. Another officer ran over, his eyes filled with worry. "Should we call the bomb squad?" Melissa swallowed. All the signs pointed to danger, explosives, toxic chemicals, or something worse. But what made her shiver was the faint, thumping sound coming from inside the suitcase. No machine makes that sound. Thor still growled, but his eyes were more than wary now. They were pleading. There was someone in there, and they were alive. Melissa bent down, her hands shaking slightly as she touched the rusty zipper. Every sense screamed, warning, be careful. But the faint sound of a heartbeat from inside the suitcase made her hesitate. Thor was still growling, close by, his eyes fixed on his target as if to emphasize hurry. Melissa took a deep breath, then slowly unzipped the zipper. The dry sound seemed to tear the tense air around them. As the fabric was torn away, all noise seemed to disappear completely. The people around held their breath. And then, they saw. Beneath the thin, tattered blanket was a small child, no more than 2 years old, pale lips blue from the cold. She was curled up in a defensive position, her small hands clutching the edge of the blanket. Her large, lifeless eyes were still open, staring straight up at Melissa. Not crying, not screaming, just a silent, desperate, pained gaze. A woman screamed behind her. A man dropped his briefcase on the floor. Melissa could barely breathe. "Call an ambulance!" She cried, her hand slipping gently into the suitcase, trying not to startle the baby. The small hand grasped her finger weakly but firmly, as if clinging to a last hope. Thor lowered his head, pressing his muzzle lightly against Melissa's shoulder, his ears flattening as if he were sheltering the child with his very presence. Melissa felt the tension turn into another emotion, heartbreak, anger, and then determination. Another officer ran in with blankets and medical supplies. The baby was removed from the suitcase, warmed, and immediately taken away on a stretcher. The people around were shocked. A seemingly harmless suitcase was actually holding a small life. And if it weren't for Thor, he might not have been found until it was too late. The siren of an ambulance cut through the stuffy air of Havenport Station, echoing like a belated alarm to a cruel truth that had just been revealed. The child, about 2 years old, was wrapped carefully in a blanket in the arms of a paramedic, his tiny body pale, his breathing heartbreakingly weak. Doctors said he was suffering from severe hypothermia, chronic dehydration, and severe psychological trauma. Melissa walked close to the stretcher, but her eyes were always on the back, where Thor, her service dog, was walking slowly, his eyes never leaving the child who was being carried out of the nightmare. The whole station seemed to freeze for a moment. From the usual hustle and bustle, there was only muffled whispers and the emotional looks of the onlookers. No one expected. It was Thor's frantic barking that saved the little life from the evil hands. While the boy was being transported to a local hospital, Melissa returned to the scene with Thor. The special operations team began to comb through the worn suitcase. Initial inspection revealed that it had been thoroughly cleaned with a specialized chemical, a clear sign of deliberate preparation. This was not the work of someone who abandoned a child out of poverty. This was part of a plan, a system. The burning questions began to arise. Who put the child in the suitcase? Why the Havenport station? A normal station with no surveillance blind spots, and most importantly, how many other children were not as lucky as this boy? Thor sat silently beside Melissa as she took notes. No one could teach a service dog to find a heart in an old suitcase. It was instinct pure and irreplaceable. Within hours of the child's discovery in the suitcase, the news went viral across social media. From clips of Thor lunging at the suitcase, barking incessantly, to the image of the boy being carried onto a stretcher, looking tired but alive, every detail made headlines. Local newspapers were quick to report, K9 dog saves toddler, trapped in suitcase miracle at Havenport train station. National television soon jumped in, broadcasting the story on its evening broadcast. Thor, the German shepherd who had quietly worked alongside Officer Melissa Grant, was now known nationwide as a four-legged hero. In interviews, Melissa could not hide her emotion as she recalled the moment Thor defied orders and rushed into danger. "If I hadn't believed him that day, we would have lost an innocent life," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Havenport, a sleepy town that rarely appears on the media map, is now filled with pride. Residents bring flowers and thank you notes to the police station. Children draw pictures for Thor, and animal rights groups call for increased awareness of the role of police dogs in modern life. A week later, the city held a ceremony in Thor's honor in the city's central square. Before hundreds of people and media cameras, Thor was presented with a sparkling silver medal engraved with the words, "A hero does not speak, only acts." In that moment, when Thor raised his head to thunderous applause, people saw more than just a dog, but the embodiment of faith instinct and irreplaceable loyalty. On a small stage in Havenport's downtown square, all eyes were on Thor, the dog sitting quietly beside Officer Melissa. The ceremony was about to end when a special moment silenced the crowd. The back gate swung open, and the rescued boy, now wearing a warm coat, his cheeks rosy again, was led slowly toward Thor by a social worker. The boy said nothing, but his eyes were different, no longer hazy or panicked like before, now hesitant, but knowing. He stepped closer, holding the old stuffed rabbit tightly in his hand. Thor did not bark, did not move, only raised his head slightly. His deep brown eyes followed the boy's every move as if waiting for a signal. One step, and then another. The boy stopped right in front of Thor. His small hand trembled as he raised it, then gently touched the dog's nose. And in that moment, the first smile in days of silence bloomed on the child's lips. No words were needed, no explanation was needed, just a touch and a look, enough for everyone to know the connection was still there. Melissa bowed her head, hiding a tear that had just fallen. All around the crowd erupted in emotion. It was not just the end of an incident, but the beginning of a journey of recovery, of a little soul who had been abandoned, and of a loyal dog who never gave up hope. The story of Thor, the K9 dog who discovered and saved a baby boy abandoned in a suitcase, is not only an extraordinary act, but also carries profound messages about trust, vigilance, and the value of loving instinct. In modern life, where people are easily caught up in the rush, we sometimes forget the small signs, the silent hunches that can save a life. Thor has no voice, but his actions remind us that loyalty and sincere instincts are sometimes more trustworthy than reason. The story also highlights the importance of listening, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Whether in work relationships or with those who seem incapable of speaking up like a wounded child, opening your heart to feel can make a difference. And ultimately, it is a reminder that in a world of hurt, all it takes is one act at the right time, one heart that feels compassionate, to rekindle hope that seems lost.